Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the ClarITea Chat. Learning from practitioners, the science and art of managing IT. So, and this is the Chai Pe Charcha. Okay, so this is the session where we accidentally went live on Saturday, and there was no PPT. I was in a round neck T-shirt, and I was pretty sweaty and all that. So now this coming back this time, thankfully I have got a PowerPoint for you just to explain whatever concepts we were discussing that day, and I'm going to share that with you. So give me a minute. Let me share my PPT. Yeah. So this is the this is ClarITea Chat. The name has been very carefully selected. There's a tea there. So here's the tea and discussion over a cup of tea on everything IT. So let's, when I was going to start it, I looked at, I mean, for me, first principles are important as to why should we be doing something. So I kind of dipped back into all my experience, and then, I basically brought out certain hypotheses and theories, as you may call it. So the first thing is that IT is a three-dimensional management problem. So if you see um, the different axes, in any sorry, I just need to change the presentation. So just give me a minute. I'll change the presentation and come back. I've probably taken a previous version. Okay. Yeah. So that was the wrong slide. So coming back. So it's a multi-dimensional complexity, industry, processes, technologies. So if you see in any other function, whether it is operations, HR, finance, there is the industry specificity here, whether it's HR or finance for manufacturing, for pharma. And that I would call it a two-dimensional problem. Now, when it comes to IT or technologies, there is the industry specificity here. IT is interacting with every single function, so there is also a functional specificity. And then you have to basically marry technology into the industry versus process. So that makes it a three-dimensional problem compared to a two-dimensional problem of others. The next is the IT return on investment. I think it's probably a function of this complexity that 83% of the IT projects do not achieve ROI. So my good friend Vijay Ramchandran, who's the ex-executive editor of CIO magazine, he does a digital transformation audit, and it's a very stark finding that 83% of IT projects never achieve ROI. Okay, so that is the kind of success rate of IT. Maybe complexity is one of the reasons, but let's also understand, some of the other dimensions of this problem. So if you look at, all the other industries, I just did a time scale mapping of it. All the other functions, in whether it is manufacturing, automation, human resources, etc., finance, consulting. All of these are at least 100 to 300-year-old functions. So they have been. So you can say the modern management science has been, around for almost about 300 years since the Industrial Revolution began. But IT, on the other hand, is a nascent function. It just started about 50 years back, around 1970s, and it has been changing very fast. We have seen the speed at which information technology has changed. No other function has changed with the same speed. And then, if you look at of late, post 2000, since the mobiles came around 2007 and 8, the technology has really been consumerized. It's a, uh, the cloud coming in, which basically said that, you can be a business of any size. You can be on you don't require a PC or a laptop anymore. So, today, people all around India, if you look at, they consume technology on their mobiles. So I kind of, take all these trends, whatever we may call as digital transformation, or, or digital technologies. I just call that as a technology consumeration. Now that is very recent, and that has changed the way, IT is developed, managed really fast. The next problem, or I would say, I wouldn't call it a problem, I would just say, a dimension. Another parameter is the asymmetric talent distribution in IT. So if you look at 90% of the technology talent is on supplier side, whether it is products, whether it is system integrators. The talent on the sell side is 90%, on the buy side is 10%. And this asymmetry of talent, combined with the nascent stage of IT management as a science, sort of, well, creates the issues which kind of reflect in that 17% projects being success. The next comes, this is something I will ever be thankful to one of my supplier friends. When we are talking about pricing, he gave me the equation of technology selling, and he said that, technology is a infinite incremental margin business. Well, not always, not services, mostly products. Okay, but whatever it is, the margins are high, especially as you keep going from services to products. The margins keep increasing, and that actually, means that if the cost of goods sold is near zero, then a huge amount of efforts can be invested, and all the cost that you have is on the sales and marketing side, and therefore you see, a number of events, and, huge investment in sales, and this, I think, this entire margin equation draws a lot of talent on the sell side. One of my, I can call him friends, mentees. This guy is like a digital transformation leader in a in a manufacturing company, and he wants to actually join Google or Microsoft. What else can explain that? The fact that, the life is much better on the other side. Okay, so now that's kind of the background of the ClarITea Chat. So it is developing clarity about IT, okay, over a cup of tea, okay. And the reason is, the art and science of IT is not completely documented. Two reasons: that it's a nascent field of management, and second is that this field is changing very fast. So it's, I would say, the whole conversion towards science happens when you have more and more, I would say, documentation and research that comes out. It's still in progress. The second thing is that we need to, and therefore, because it's much more of an art rather than science, we need to learn from the practitioners, which is people who have cracked the code, while doing it with their own hands. So I am one of them, and I know there are my fellow CIOs who have figured this out, how to develop success with IT. And this is therefore a completely independent, candid chat with IT leaders on real management and leadership issues of IT. And This is like, what differentiates the 17% from the 83%. What are those things that the guys who are on the 17% side are doing, which on the other side they're not doing on the 83%? Is it technology? Definitely no, because it's the same technology. That it's not that they are using a much better technology than the people who are not finding success with technology. And that's the art of it. That's what is creating. So it can be about change management. It can be about how you work with your partners. It can be how your business relationships are. How do you govern IT and the entire agenda? How do you strategize? So there are a number of things beyond pure technology alone, which is differentiating that 17% from 83%. And that's what we want to bring out, in not in a very heady or very pedagogical manner, but as informal chats, storytelling, and asking some real questions in IT management and careers, all over a cup of tea. So that's what it is about. And now I'll be happy to field any questions. Oh, I can see quite a few questions there. Hey, good evening, everyone. Ganesh, Vinay, Santosh. Yeah, so let me start by browsing some of these questions here. Um, yeah, ROI is achieving ROI is very difficult without technological support. Yes, but technology is necessary, but not sufficient. So there's so much more beyond the technology that you need to do. Technology sales is an infinite incremental margin business. Yes, we talked about it. Imran says that's a wrong perception. Well, I mean, I just told an anecdote that I heard from, the CEO of a technology company, and as I said, it is not so much in the case of services. It's much more in the case of products, and I think that's where your, major, I would say, issues are there with respect to the technology selection. Okay, and that's what makes it confusing. So let me now. So last time around, there were many more questions, probably because it was a Saturday. So let me answer some of these questions here. The question from Umesh was, don't you think IT will have a limitation at some point in future? So yeah, IT. I mean, as I said, IT is necessary but not sufficient. So the limitation will be more in terms of how can you manage it well, how can you run successful programs. There are many more things to IT. Like, for example, one of them is that that you got to first look at your processes and look at where those levers in your processes are to drive the benefits or outcomes. You take a bad process and try to implement technology on it, it will get worse. So for example, streamlining your processes before you bring in technology is one of those things. So, but if the question is that technology will have some limitation at some point in future, yes, we can have, but we don't know. As of now, we don't know where it stops. Then there was another question again from Umesh, which was, has IT already reached the innovation pinnacle? I don't think so. There is so much more to there's so much more to technology, and that is basically, if you just look at the startup landscape, the number of startups who are out there coming out with ideas and even innovations, for example, in deep tech and all that. I don't think we are, anywhere near the pinnacle of innovation. There's still a lot more to come. Let me pick up some question from here. How does vendor selection happen in IT industry? Coming from Sandeep. So, Sandeep, I would say again, given that I mentioned that, there's no particular that the management science and art is not very old. So the vendor selection, the typical process is there that you bring out an RFP and then you do a POC and then the process goes to procurement. I think that's a typical process that happens. But as I said, given uh, the intense competition, the kind of choice that is out there, and the intense sales efforts, it gets a little confusing unless you have a very very robust process. So when I was in my own times, I had uh, developed a very strong process for technology selection, which was rigorous. But then the downside was that uh, it delayed the selections a bit. So but then we set the expectations. One of the other things that I believe is like hotel that technology is like Hotel California. So uh, it's very easy to get in but hard to get out. And then when I explained everything to my business stakeholders and people who were involved, they kind of understood it and they said, yeah, we are willing to let a very very rigorous process run its course, instead of instead of getting stuck with a bad choice. Okay. So yeah, then other question is how to manage situation where CIO still reports to CFO and digital transformation is getting critical. Well, I reported to CFO for a long period of time, uh, and um, I think it's many times it is much easier to convince the CFO whenever you are able to talk the business language. See, end of the day, there are so many processes around, whether it's production, sales, everything. I think CFOs have a very very good bandwidth of looking at the entire operation, and they are very savvy in converting things to business value. So as a CIO, if you can translate what you do in terms of the business value, and then you're able to communicate it to CFO, I think you can have a great relationship. But yes, there is a struggle around business value, and maybe in my upcoming chats with leaders, this is one question I intend to ask them, that how do you crack the value equation, and more importantly, you know um, communicating that value expectation to your leaders. Okay, so what are your suggestions for startup? How much basic investment is required? Coming from Vinay. So um, yeah, startup, I think there is a big problem that you should be looking around for solving, and you must have some technology, I would say, solution in your mind. And then it goes down to basic maths in terms of what kind of team you will require, what technologies you will be looking into. um, yeah, so again, it's not a simple question. Depends on what kind of startup you want to do. If it is a startup into, let's say for example, robotics and all, robotics, IoT and all, there's some hardware that you will require. If it is only software, then it is something different. Yeah. So coming back, let me put some other questions. um, how to balance. Okay, does CIOs really care about various pricing models like outcome based pricing model, etc.? See, outcome based pricing models have been there, but um, it's not about the CIOs caring about it. It is actually about CIO is not the only decision maker in the company. There are many others who are there, and it's about convincing a lot of people. So even if CIO may be convinced, if he or she is not able to convince others, then then that will be a challenge. So the other thing also is that uh, the technology intervention in between, there is a certain element of process changes and transformation that you have to do, and then only the business outcomes come in. So most of the times the customers say that I want to own that, that process change and transformation. And if there is a big value out there, I mean, why can't I do it myself? Okay. So how to balance automating personal work with IT tools? Oh, there is so much of personal technology out there. I use it quite a lot, and maybe sometime I can cover it. But I'll just give you an example. In my iPhone, I've got something called keyboard shortcuts, and I have, like, these four-letter acronyms. Okay, which if I type them, and they're not typical words. So when I type them, it basically expands that. Like, for example, I'll give you some examples. I've got a, JBML, four-letter word. As soon as I type it, it basically types my entire email ID, jcb@jagdishbelwal.com. If I type Thikana, it basically expands it to my entire address. Now, these are things that you will be surprised, how much of these are hidden out there, and how much of it you can use. Like, for example, I've got my GST number at JGST. As soon as I do that, my GST number gets printed on whatever app I am on. So there's so much that you can do in terms of personal productivity. I mean, the limits are amazing. I mean, like, for example, I just want to show you, this is a keyboard. Okay. Um, Now, we know that mobiles, we type so much of stuff nowadays. You start getting thumb pains. There's some health issues and all of that. I picked it up. This device can connect to three different mobile devices. It has got a cradle where I can put my phone, okay, my phone or my iPad, and I can simply, I can simply use this particular dial to connect to a particular device. It can connect to three devices, okay, and that way, whenever I have to, let's say, like, finish up my WhatsApps, or let's say I have to respond to comments on LinkedIn, I can simply put my phone on the cradle, put on the lap, and start tuck 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 tuck. So there is quite a lot you can do with personal technology. Just keep your eyes open. Just be an have this bias for learning. Okay, what's happening out there? What can I learn something new? What can I experiment with? So kind of do it all the time, and makes me super productive. Okay. So, okay, Imran, yes, I wouldn't get into a debate, but yeah, there's never an infinite margin in any business. So, if you heard me clearly, I said infinite incremental margin. What it means is that, when you have an incremental sales, okay, what is your incremental cost? It is basically incremental sales revenue divided by incremental cost. So let's say if I'm buying, like, I bought recently, some licenses, mail productivity licenses, etc. I just went and bought it from the portal, and no human interface. So the incremental cost of is basically the cost of technology, whatever portal load I created on that portal, and the revenue. So it is not absolute revenues. Absolute margins can never be infinite. It's the incremental revenue versus incremental cost. Okay. So, wow, my good friend Rahul out there, my question is very basic but crucial. Are you convinced by the tech life cycle that orgs follow? Is that the reason for technical debt, or is it too much tech from vendors? So, Rahul, your answers are within your questions itself. So, the reason for technical debt, of course, is that I think the biggest reason for technical debt is that there's so much, I would say, out there which is not well defined or well documented. I have been in situation where I was able to completely migrate entire enterprise systems from one data center to another data center in 3.5 months. And the reason was that, we had complete documentation. So one of the things I started doing from my day one as CIO was, keep detailed documentation on everything that we are doing. Okay. Like for example, when you are shifting a data center, the biggest issue becomes integrations, and we had absolute down to the level detail of what type of integration between what systems, what processes, and if I shift my one of my systems out, which all integrations are going to get impacted and all that. So I think technical debt is a lot of fear, that what if I touch this, something will fall apart. And the only antidote to that is the strong document, which traditionally has been absent. And I think that's the reason we have technical debt. So, yeah, so Rahul, your next question was, too much tech from vendors. Yes, there is too much tech from vendors as well. As I said, the intensive sales efforts and not enough long-term strategic thinking being done sometimes, which results in it. But yeah, eventually, it is everyone to to their own in terms of what created problems for you and how you solve it in the future. So Ratnesh, for technology solution providers, what are the key considerations for transforming engagement from being a vendor to strategic partner? And a couple of things that always put off CXOs in sales journey. I can tell you that 90%, actually, I have got another, on my YouTube channel, I've got another 11-minute video about how to sell to CIOs. So you can watch it. Should give you some insights there. But 90% of the time, I was talking to anybody in sales, the discussion would start with, this is what I have, this is what I have, this is how I'm better than competition, this is how it is. I was saying, but the sales process starts with understanding my needs as a customer. So I think more often than not, the answer will be, do you understand your customer well? Have you done enough research on it? Can you sort of feel for your customer? What are their pressures? Or when you are in a customer's in front of a customer, what's going through your mind is like, how much revenue I can make, or how much short I am falling from my targets. So so two things. One is like, you must know your customer well. So if the customer feels that you have done research about him, you understand him or her. And the second is like, being very clear about the outcomes. And again, these outcomes are contextual. You can't give too many case studies. Again, if your knowledge of the customer is better, then your ability to connect what your technology does to what kind of problems it will solve the customer will be much better. Thank you, Vinay, for the compliment ClarITea Chat. Sandeep, does CIO and CTO have the same responsibilities in an organization? Why separate CISO needed if there is already a CIO? CIO and CTO have the same responsibility. It depends on the industry, because there is a term called IT and OT, information technology and operational technology. Like for example, IT is where you manage a lot of data, but there may be operating technology which is automating a lot of tasks for you. Like for example, robots in a manufacturing line, right? Or design technologies in an automotive organization, or for example, let's say pharma technology in a pharma organization. So many times, the CTO role is more to look for a lot of process automation technologies for the business rather than the IT. So wherever that distinction is clear, there are no conflicts. But if you don't clarify the distinction, of course, you're in for trouble. Why is a separate CISO needed if there is already a CIO? A separate CISO is needed because security is a very deep domain in itself. The pace at which threats are emerging, and the pace at which hackers are out there, or all the bad actors are out there, you require somebody to really deeply engage in that domain. And CIO with multiple other responsibilities, managing business relationships, managing vendors, managing technologies, you may not have a complete focus on that side. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's all the questions we have for now. So we are just on the 30-minute dot, and loved all the questions from everyone. Guys, thanks for this. Thanks for the reception. In fact, I was really surprised on Saturday when we were testing and the kind of questions, and again today. Thank you so much. I think it's been a good start, and I will look forward to seeing you Tuesdays. Or if you have better suggestions in terms of uh, which day of the week and what time of the day suits better to you, I will be really looking forward to those feedback. So the format of this chat. So today was the introductory, session where only I'm speaking. But the format is that I'll be bringing in senior CIO leaders, each having cracked some of the code, and doing an informal chat like this, on both sides, and hopefully driving some insights and some as I said, the art of managing IT through those conversations. You may also call them as chai pe charcha. Sorry, Divakar, what was your question? I'm sorry if I missed it. Let me scroll. What is the tech innovation contributed to address pandemic challenges? WFH solutions are available since 2010. Is the innovation ecosystem has a direction and making sense with situational intelligence in India? Okay, address the pandemic challenges. So WFH solutions available since 2010, but there are many people who looked at it as a cost, who did not really look at it seriously. I remember, when I was bringing Office 365 way back, there wasn't like everybody was convinced. It was like, we come to office, we come to factories, why do we need it? And then we had to do a good amount of work to kind of get that adopted. Now, what pandemic has done is like, the adoption has been sort of automatic. When you can't travel out of home, um, you have no option but to adopt technology. So what it has done is it has really increased the depth and breadth of adoption. Um, if uh, if not contributing completely new to the innovation, there are some innovations which have happened in terms of contact tracing through video analytics and stuff like that. Yeah, but um, you know technology always works to solve a problem. Pandemic created a lot of problems, and people have really broken their heads with how to solve those problems. So innovation ecosystem has a direction and making sense with situational intelligence. Yeah, innovation ecosystem is pretty strong in India. NASSCOM is doing a lot of things. There are lots of startups which are trying to solve problems on every area. I talked last time about the amount of innovation that's happening on, like, into increasing the agriculture produce using IoT and all. It's just that we have to find our connects to that ecosystem. Okay, and yeah, just one. Okay, can CISO manage the responsibilities of CIO and vice versa? I answered that question some time back. Please have a look. Um, yeah, CISO, as of today, the kind of threat actors which are there, bad actors who are there, they're just too many, and you require some focus on that. Okay, Imran, how have your experiences been as a CIO in choosing a technology which aren't among the top vendor list? Have you taken such risks? Is there? Oh, yes, 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 all the time. It's always, as I said, I had a very strong vendor selection process, technology selection process, and but then that always started with what do we want, okay, as an organization for our set of challenges, and then selecting the technology for that challenge. So I have done quite a bit of that. Maybe we can talk offline as to how those engagements were. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I think it took a little more time to answer the other two questions, but yeah, look forward to hosting this on a weekly basis with my friends and colleagues and seniors from the industry, and just bringing more and more clarity, which is the ClarITea Chat. Bye bye.